Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing.
Welcome back to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer. With me is Thomas Young, the CEO of Intuitive Websites, and today we are talking about converting salespeople into web marketers. And I'm sure some of our listeners out there are probably cringing now, going, wait, we're no longer going to have salespeople, we're going to have web marketers? What exactly does that mean, Tom?
Well, I just want to make a point here that selling by prospecting or cold calling or anything like that is dead. And so what selling is about now is working with qualified leads that contact you. And many of those leads come from the internet or from referral sources or word of mouth. People are just too inundated these days with information and email and all these contact points. There's no way they're going to respond to cold calling. It just doesn't work. And we can screen everything we get. The days of a receptionist answering the phone and forwarding the call back to you with no caller ID, it's all gone. So what is the solution to this? And there's a lot of salespeople trying to be more effective. Either they're looking for work or they're in a job right now not hitting their targets. They want to be more effective. My thought is get yourself converted to a web marketing professional. And then what you're focused on is generating qualified leads that you can present to and write a proposal and close, as opposed to going out trying to find leads and then spending all the time qualifying them. In a lot of the presentations that I give, I talk about the idea that selling has really been turned on its head. And instead of you being the one that's out there prospecting, the customer is now prospecting. And how do they prospect? On the web. And in fact, we just talked in our previous podcast about Google and search. Well, that's what they're doing. They're on all the different websites that exist out there to pull information, whether it's a blog or whatever it might be. And they're doing the prospecting, trying to find your company.
And if you're not visible, you don't get the business.
That's right. That's right. And so then once they do find your website, the website has to do a good job of explaining your services and products, so that qualifies them. So when they finally talk to a sales rep or give you their information, it's a pre-qualified sales lead that should be, in many cases, have a high close rate, 50% or more. But there's still a lot of people out there cold calling. There's a lot of people that don't see that way, aren't using the web effectively. And that's why I think let's start this conversion process. Let's turn salespeople into web marketing people, and then they can do the closing in the back end.
So are they going to still sell? That's going to be the big questions coming up. So if they're now a web marketer is their new title, are they still selling?
Absolutely, they're still selling. And in fact, they're going to sell in ways that they just love to sell. So we'll get away from the cold calling and the prospecting, and we'll get more into the fine-tuning of qualification, the writing of proposals, the staying in touch and follow-up part, the building a relationship and communicating, the presenting component, if you have to do more in detailed presenting, and finally the closing. And this is where the best salespeople excel, is in those parts. I was a sales manager for years and years, and we always had this differentiation between prospectors and closers. And you could almost see right off the bat when someone started working for you if they were a prospector, which is someone that can make a lot of contacts and make a lot of calls and talk to decision makers, and a closer, someone who could actually close the deal and bring in the business. And so what's happening is the folks in the past were the prospectors. There's not a need for that anymore. What we need now is the closers, which in reality, that's what salespeople should be anyway. But if you were a prospector, there is hope for you on the web, because you can learn these skills to generate leads, and then either work on your closing skills or hand them over to someone that can close. So I think that there's definitely a role for salespeople, and I think that it can definitely work. And in fact, there's two roles that we have to think about. One is the concept of being a web marketing person and understand all the things we've talked about in these podcasts. But then there's also the component of being a database manager and prospector. And I'll clarify that a little bit. With the CRM tools that we have now, it is so easy to stay in touch and track and manage thousands of people. And you do it in such a way that you're not prospecting or cold calling, but you have thousands of folks in this big keep-in-touch sales funnel that can turn into business. And, for example, let's say that you get a qualified lead and you close 50% of those. That's great. But what do you do with the other 50%? Well, they go into this contact management system where you stay in front of them, stay in contact, measure and track their activity. Are they opening your emails? What are they doing? And then over time, that 50% that bailed will eventually come back to you in some form. And it can be done very cost effectively if you manage your database correctly. We use Salesforce.com. They're one of the leaders, but there's many programs out there. They're all pretty effective.
So we talked about having somebody who is a salesperson who's feeling kind of down and out because of the new economy, and especially because of the web. So we've told those folks, okay, become web marketers, and then you can become invaluable to companies.
Yeah.
Now, for somebody who might be on the company end listening to this, they're thinking, how the heck can I implement something like this for my company? How should a company go about doing this?
Well, it is a challenge because the management of the company needs to know what they're getting into. Now, there's a ton of resources out there to understand web marketing, and there's a ton of resources to understand database marketing. But the bottom line is that the company needs to either train the internal people or hire people that have these skills and get them up to speed. I think that, for example, you could hire folks that are salespeople and get them sitting with your SEO person, getting them understanding what SEO is like and what it's about. Having salespeople understand that the basics of selling also apply to your website, and your website might need some work. And in fact, in a lot of cases, the salespeople have the best ideas for improving the website, but because there might not be communication between IT or design, the salespeople, that content's not getting back to the website, to the company website. So another thing a company can do is open those channels of communication from sales to technology so that the web is more effective.
Now, what about expert status? Because this is something that the web has done a lot of.
Yes.
You can go out and you can find blogs on anything, and you can find content. And what it seems to me, being online, are the people that are getting the most business are the people that are the experts in a field.
And I think a lot of companies have a lot of salespeople that are experts on product and service. And that information, that content that's in their brains, the conversations they have with prospects and customers, that can easily be translated to a website or a blog or a podcast or whatever it might be. And that certainly needs to happen. And then that salesperson is going to become more of a closer because they will be seen as an expert. One of the industries that I think about where this is so important is in construction, real estate, and commercial properties and residential properties, land development, anything to do with construction. There are a massive amount of salespeople looking for work in these areas because of the downturn we've seen. This is a perfect time for them to take their expertise and their knowledge and get online, because far too many realtor websites or commercial realtor websites are terrible. They have no value-added content. There's not stuff there that's going to motivate people to contact them. All that can be changed and updated if you take your selling tools that you had in the past and start converting them to the web.
Well, isn't it true, though, that most of those websites are template websites that most of the realtors use?
Yeah, they take the easy way out and just put a template up there and have a link to the current listings that they have available, and boom, that's it. Well, if everybody's doing that, what's the value add for you as a realtor or whatever property you're trying to sell? So the value add comes from what happens in a conversation that leads to a close. Whatever's going on in that conversation is your added value, and that needs to be on your website. And that's how people will connect with you, whether it's your personality or your product knowledge or your specific marketplace knowledge. All of that needs to be on the site. And it goes across all marketplaces, not just in construction, home building, whatever it might be.
Well, it's true. In sales, people do business with people they like and trust.
Yes.
And if they trust that you're the expert because they can see it online, they can look and they can see your digital footprint. They can see what you've been doing. They can see what you've talked about. They can hear what you've talked about. They go, oh, clearly this person's the expert. I want to do business with them. So let's say that.
Absolutely.
So we have these companies. We have our listeners that are out there that are sitting back going, I don't have that person on my staff.
That's right.
So and clearly I need that person on my staff. Well, how do you find that salesperson who is now the web marketer who has made that transition? How do you find that? Because obviously, there's job placement searches and whatnot, and headhunters, and those people are, a dime a dozen on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing people go more away from that, away from the recruiting end, and just going out to find the experts and recruiting the experts themselves. How can companies find those salespeople?
Well, you're probably not going to find someone who has a resume that says, I can do all these things. I'm an expert web marketer. I think the number one thing to look for is the desire to do it and a very comfortable attitude around computers and technology. And then you have to begin the process of training it. Now, it starts at the top. And I'll clarify what I'm saying here. If you are the CEO of a company or a key manager in a company and you don't understand the fundamentals and basics of web marketing, database marketing, CRM systems, then you've got a major problem. You've got to fix that. You've got to get the understanding in your company. And then that understanding has to go directly to the sales force. In fact, I would go as far as to say the companies that don't have an understanding of web marketing, CRM, that sort of thing, are going to get left behind. Their competition is going to just crush them because there's just no way they can cost effectively reach their marketplace and stay in business over the long term when someone else are doing these things.
Now, if they don't have somebody in-house right now, is it easier to bring somebody in who has those skills, or is it going to be easier to train somebody who's already in-house, making an assumption that they already have a full plate because they have a different job description?
Yeah, it depends on the culture in your business. And I think for most companies are going to, I'm guessing, do a combination of those things, maybe bring people in from the outside, at least on the training component. One of the things that we do with our consulting services is we do train internal people on how to do these things. And we have found that after about a year or two, they start to get it and can run with it on their own. But there's probably a combination of things, but in most cases that it's going to come from the outside. And then it needs to, like I said, work its way up the top. It's really nice, though, that if you look at someone generally in their late 20s to probably early 30s, they've grown up with the internet now. So they have, many cases, they have their own websites. They've been on Facebook. They know how to go in and log in and do things on sites. They're very comfortable around computers. These folks can easily be trained to become web marketers. They just need that strategic sense first, and then the fundamentals. That's where we start.
And once again, that goes back to web strategy, which is what we talked about in our last podcast. That's
right, and we've all the podcasts have talked about that. But this podcast is a little different in that I'm really thinking that our listeners need to take some concrete steps to convert salespeople into really web marketers and database marketers. And I think you incentivize and reward them based on that. You get them trained. You get the right people hired. Look for people who have a passion for it. I think it could be really good.
Now, where can people find, I guess, troll for web marketing and salespeople? Where would be the best place for them to go about finding those folks?
Well, on the web. And I think Craigslist is a great place to look for postings. If you can get inside the head of the person that surfs the web a lot and is on the internet a lot, I think that's the place to go. Facebook, certainly put postings on your own website. LinkedIn. And I think it's really finding good people is another form of web marketing in itself. So you have to follow the same fundamental strategies so that they find you. It's the idea of going and recruiting people and cold calling for people. That's also very tough these days. But the person that's looking and wants to find you will find you if you're out there and you have your postings listed. And it shouldn't be expensive. Craigslist is free, for example. And but it's really about clarifying who you are, what you're looking for, and I think the right person will find you.
And we'll also, LinkedIn's the same thing. They have all the questions and answers place that you can go through and just type in web marketing and try to find people that have that. And I think it's most business people are fairly savvy on the internet today, so they can go look at a blog and they can see a post and they can see through whether or not it's quality or if it was taken somewhere else. So I think that's another thing. If you really want to look at what a digital resume looks like, obviously there's LinkedIn, but most companies in background checks now are doing full-scale searches across Google, Facebook, MySpace. They're going to see, okay, who is this person personally and professionally?
Absolutely. You do a background check on the web, and it's so easy to do that. And so the other thing, too, is that you're leaving a permanent footprint. As you go around the web and you're on Facebook and you're on LinkedIn and doing different things, you're leaving a permanent footprint that people come back and look at. So just make sure that footprint is good, especially for younger folks these days that tend to live their life on Facebook. Well, if you're having wild drunken parties, every weekend and you're putting them on Facebook, then you want to go get a nice corporate job paying 6 figures. I don't know, it might be tough. So watch what you're doing on Facebook as far as if you're looking for a job, how to cover your tracks.
I think that's across the board. Well, let's look at the action plan for all of our listeners to be able to bring in outside salespeople who are now web marketers or converting salespeople to web marketers. What do they need to do, Tom?
Well, I think the thing we just talked about is critical. Develop a strategy for going out and finding good people, using your own website, Craigslist, Facebook, and other resources to have them drawn to you. And also evaluate your current sales force for possible web marketers. Find out who has a passion for it, who's naturally good on the computer, who would love to do this as part of their job, and then integrate their sales skills with web marketing and then database management skills. You need to have a CRM system. You need to have a database. This goes beyond an email marketing system. It goes into how you stay in touch with people and a strategy for follow-up. The CRM system can drive all that, by the way. Also, develop an annual plan for your database marketing and content development through that database, whether it be webinars or podcasts or blogging, whatever you're doing. And then keep in mind that you need to have a very strong lead conversion strategy on your website, or all this isn't gonna work. And then finally, as you develop your web marketing plan, don't forget about the salespeople. They have got to integrate into your web marketing plan, because when a lead does come in, they have to know how to respond to that lead and close it.
And what exactly that sales funnel looks like.
Absolutely.
As you're talking about all of this, it really, really, really comes to mind that people that are running home-based businesses, and I now a home-based business, you can't even really call it a home-based business. It is a legitimate business.
It can
people
be.
running their businesses. It might be a solo. What do they call it? A solo entrepreneur.
Yeah, free agent.
Free agent.
Right.
Sitting at home. Those people are probably going to require somebody else to come in and manage that strategy, because this can easily take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing it correctly, it sounds like you're really looking at, especially in the beginning, 10 to 20 hours a week. When you're setting up your system, it could easily take that out of your workload, and it might be better to find somebody who's an expert in that to bring them in.
Right, and it is an investment. You're making an investment in the growth of the company, and you're laying a foundation for something that could bring returns for your business years down the road.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us again for the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.